All right. Welcome back, everyone, to the flip side, the podcast where we dive into the world of real estate flipping and talk to people who are actually making it happen. I'm your host, Gavin, and today we've got a special guest lineup. If you ever wondered what it really takes to flip a property for profit, like the risk, the strategy, and what goes on behind the scenes, you're in the right place. Today, I'm joined by Sal, someone who has real experience in flipping in house flipping game. We're going to break down how he got started, what deals look like from his perspective, and what advice he has for beginners trying to get into the business. Sal, thanks for coming on to the show.
Thanks for having me, Gavin. I appreciate it.
Let's start simple. Can you tell us a little about yourself and how you got flipping into real estate?
Well, I've been a realtor since 2003. So I've been doing this for a long time. I became a broker owner of
Mhm.
my own ReMax company in 2017. Uh, so I've been in this real estate game for a long time and in a lot of different ways.
Okay. That's awesome. I see a lot of people flipping or doing real estate on social media platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and I
Right.
think it's easy money, but I'm sure it's not that simple. What was
Uh,
your first real estate transaction like?
well, the first one was just obviously the scariest one
Mm,
because you're new at the game.
yeah,
When you do it for somebody else, or when you're doing it for a client as a realtor would do it,
yeah.
um, you kind of know what's going on, you know how it's done, and you
Mm,
probably know the outcome because you know the market, you kind of know what it would sell for. But when you have your
mm,
own money on the line, then your mind starts playing games with you.
mm.
And all of a sudden, you start getting worried.
Okay.
If what would happen if this what goes wrong, what if that goes
Mm,
wrong. But at the end of the day, it's really a mathematical equation, and
okay.
that's the way it's really succeeds.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like people don't realize how much risk is involved and how much you actually have to work. What would you say is like the biggest challenge?
Um, I would say the biggest challenge is finding the property.
Okay.
That is the biggest challenge. I mean,
Mm,
basically you can really flip anything you want, but
yeah.
what's the outcome?
Mm-hmm.
Finding the right price, it's got to be the right type of property. You have to find the one that needs a little work, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you restore it, and it has to be in a marketing group that most people would want. You're
Mm-hmm.
not looking at the overly high-end homes, the million-dollar
Yeah.
homes, because those are not flippable. They are,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just a little too risky. And
Mm-hmm.
then you don't want the really, really cheap ones because that's a problem too. I think the ones that you really want to do is like middle down the road that the majority of people are looking at. So you have a big pool of
Mm-hmm.
possibilities. That is the biggest issue. That's the
Okay.
biggest challenge.
Okay. So you would say the main things you look for before you're buying property is mainly the location and the condition of the property.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
you want a location that is hot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That
Mm-hmm.
people are going to come to that location and see the
Mm-hmm.
house. Then
Okay.
you want to find something that is needs work,
Yeah.
and needs to be spruced up.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so that yeah, those are the two things that are definitely that have to play into each other
Mm-hmm.
to even get the process starting.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. For someone who's listening and who's trying to get started into, flipping real estate, what's like one mistake beginners make that they should avoid?
Oh, okay. So you need to build a team.
Okay.
When I say a team, you have to have players involved that are going to help you.
Mm-hmm.
That they might even have some skin in the game, because if everybody has a little skin in the game, it succeeds. So for myself, I work as the realtor, but let's just say I wasn't a realtor. I would need a realtor to actually help me find the homes
Mm-hmm.
and then market it afterwards,
Mm-hmm.
when after the process. Then you need a lender that is going to be able to lend money unless you are liquid enough to
Mm-hmm.
put to buy these homes cash,
Yeah.
which I don't advise.
Mm-hmm.
As a professional flipper, you want to use other people's money actually,
Mm-hmm.
for a limited amount of time to flip the property.
Okay.
Then you know you so you have a lender, you have the realtor, you want an attorney that is going to work very,
Mm-hmm.
very quickly, closing the deal, sending out contracts.
Mm-hmm.
So you need and then obviously construction. You need to speak to somebody and start a relationship with them that they're going to say, listen, this is if this is your first flip, you
Mm-hmm.
got this deal, but I'm going to be doing several more during the year, and you will be my go-to. So. I need a certain commitment for you. First of all,
Yeah.
time-wise, you gotta do this as quick as possible and also as cheap as possible because
Mm-hmm.
that's where your profits disappear with the construction.
Okay. Hey, that's great advice. I mean, I would say, before you wrap up, as a college student like me,
Huh.
what's the biggest piece of advice you would give him or give her for, a college student like me to get into the real estate business?
Okay, so if you were starting this business, and even if you had another job and you were doing
Hmm.
flipping on the side, I probably would tell you to get your real estate license.
Okay.
So eliminate that end.
Hmm.
Work for a small company and start um, advertising, finding properties, and seeing if you could actually, locate the proper flip,
Yeah.
that works. So you're
Hmm.
using yourself as a resource rather than going out to a realtor
Hmm.
and using them and then also paying them. So you're taking that part away. So you're probably building in the commission, back into the whole process.
Yeah.
Um, then I would tell you to be careful about time. Time is your
Hmm.
enemy. The longer from the time that you buy this property to the time you sell it, most likely you're going to be um, borrowing the money. So you're gonna be paying maybe, I wouldn't say full payments, maybe interest only payments. But that builds. So you need to be able to get out of this process very quickly. As the months go by, you have to pay that note, and that
Hmm.
eats into your profit. Very rarely are you going to find a property to flip that's going to provide you that home run, that grand slam that's going to
Yeah.
bring tremendous amount of money. It's really like it's little hits,
Yeah.
depending on what you think is little. So if you can make 75 to $100,000 on a flip, that's fantastic. Hit them,
Hmm.
move on. Hit it, move on. Hit it, move on. If you're looking for that major home run, it doesn't really happen. So that being said, time is a big problem. You have to get out of that property
Okay.
quickly from the time you purchase it to the time you sell it.
Okay. I see. That's great advice. I mean, yeah, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your experience. I think a lot of people are going to learn from this.
Thank you.
Um, all right, so that's a wrap on today's episode. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to share it and follow the podcast for more conversations with real people flipping real estate for profit. Thank you, guys.